It all began when the popular Lagos caterer, Janet, and Felix got married in a private wedding with not more than 20 people in attendance. They had met at a dinner party where Janet was the caterer. Felix enjoyed the food so much and decided to go commend the caterer. "I enjoyed your food, madam. Thank you so much and keep it up. Your husband is really lucky," Felix said when he approached her. Janet smiled, revealing her beautiful set of white teeth. "Thank you so much for your compliments, sir, but I am not married," she said calmly. She gave Felix her business card and asked him to call her for his events. They became friends afterward, and their friendship grew into a romantic relationship, which led to marriage. Felix, who was the head of the marketing team at First Bank in Lagos, seemed to be like an answered prayer. A loving and supportive husband, Felix made Janet feel like her dreams of having a beautiful marriage were finally coming true. Janet became pregnant immediately after their wedding, and they welcomed a beautiful baby girl after 9 months. The arrival of their daughter brought even more joy. But what Janet didn't know was that the same family she trusted would threaten to shatter their happiness in unimaginable ways. The baby was named Sarah. Felix's 22-year-old younger brother, Will, was living with him when he got married to Janet. Will had written JAMB and was waiting to be admitted into the university. When Janet moved in after their wedding, she had wanted to tell her husband to send Will back to his old mother in the village because she wanted a more private married life. But on second thought, she let it slide. "If I do that, they will tag me a bad wife," she thought to herself. She eventually began to love Will so much like her own brother because he was really helpful around the house. About 3 months after the birth of Sarah, Felix was transferred to First Bank's Ibadan branch in Oyo State. He moved to Ibadan, leaving Will behind with his wife in Lagos. He visited them once or twice a month. Being a mom without a house help and any elder around to help her out, Will was helpful, always ready to lend Janet a hand. Janet had stopped taking catering jobs after she had her daughter. However, a mouth-watering job came from the governor's office after Sarah clocked 6 months, and Janet couldn't turn it down. She took the baby along and made one of her workers attend to her while she prepared food. Sarah, being a clingy child, cried so much that day, and Janet could barely concentrate on her work. She explained her ordeal to Will when she returned home. "I can take care of her while you go to work since she is fond of me," he answered her. Janet thought for a while. Sarah was actually very fond of her uncle. She had to make a choice. With Felix at work and Will readily available, leaving Sarah with him seemed like the perfect arrangement. "It is just once a week. She can stay with you," she told Will. Little did she know that this decision would haunt her. Will's relationship with Sarah started off normally. He would sing to her, rock her to sleep, and ensure she was well fed. Janet felt reassured. She believed Will was the ideal uncle, loving, protective, and trustworthy. But behind the mask of kindness, a storm was brewing. She began to leave her baby in his care whenever she had an event to cater. She returned home every time to either meet her baby sleeping soundly or playing cheerfully with her uncle. This gave her so much joy, and she felt very relaxed. Will grew overly attached to the baby, volunteering to watch over her even when Janet was around. Janet didn't think much of it. She simply saw it as an uncle-niece relationship. Will's admission application had failed, and he was preparing to retake another exam. He suddenly began to develop some urges that needed satisfaction. He looked at Sarah one day and decided to try something out with her when her mom was away. Just after Sarah's first birthday, Janet informed Will that she had a very big event to cover by the weekend. "Sarah will be with you as usual while I go to work," she informed him. "Sure, anything for you and my beautiful niece," Will replied with a broad smile. That weekend, Janet left for the catering job, feeling confident that Will would take care of Sarah. But this time, something went wrong. After Will was sure that Janet was gone, he locked the door with the keys, took Sarah into their smaller living room, and had her give him a suck. Sarah innocently did it. After he was satisfied, she began to cry. Will felt very good after the act. He decided to continue, knowing that Sarah was too young to make a report about his act. The next time Janet got another catering job and left Sarah with him, Will deliberately refused to feed her, making sure she was very hungry before he took her to the room and repeated the same act. This time, Sarah did it with all her strength because she was really hungry. Will was very happy. He fed her after the act and rocked her to sleep. This became Will's routine every time Janet was away, and he always looked forward to such moments. Sarah began to cry whenever she was with Will, and Janet noticed it, but she dismissed it as one of her daughter's mood swings. The baby also began to cry whenever Janet was going out, which was unlike her. Again, she ignored it, and Will continued with his evil act. One night, Janet woke up with a start. She had had a dream where she saw Sarah crying out to her, trying to tell her something which she obviously did not understand. Her heart was racing so fast, and seeing Sarah in that state really broke her heart. When she woke up, she checked on her baby, who was sleeping peacefully beside her. She cautioned herself for worrying unnecessarily, but the feeling of unease wouldn't go away. It was as though her instincts were warning her of something she couldn't yet see. Then one day, Sarah became sick. It started as a mild fever at first and then it got worse after 2 days. Janet called her husband and told him about it. Felix was away in Ghana, representing his bank at a conference at that time. He asked her to take Sarah to the hospital immediately. "I will come home as soon as I return to the country," he added. Janet took Sarah to the hospital, where a series of tests were carried out on her, but the doctors found nothing wrong with her. Then he ordered more tests using her urine samples. The result was sent to the doctor, who stared at it in disbelief. He invited Janet into his office to discuss the test results with her. The doctor looked at Janet with a mixture of concern and hesitation, unsure how to break the news. "Mrs. Felix," he began, his tone serious yet compassionate, "the test results show something unusual. We found traces of adult DNA in your daughter's samples." Janet's heart sank. She stared at the doctor, her mind racing. "What does that mean, doctor?" she asked, her voice trembling. The doctor hesitated, then said softly, "It indicates potential abuse, Mrs. Felix. I'm deeply sorry to have to say this, but I believe your daughter may have been subjected to something inappropriate." Janet felt as though the room was spinning. Her chest tightened, and tears welled up in her eyes. She clutched her bag tightly as the realization began to dawn on her. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that can't be true. It can't be." The doctor leaned forward, his expression filled with sympathy. "I understand this is incredibly difficult to hear, but I must recommend involving the authorities. It's critical to protect your child and get to the bottom of what happened." Janet nodded weakly, her mind a whirlwind of emotions, fear, guilt, disbelief, and anger. As she left the doctor's office, her thoughts turned to Will. Could it be him? He was the only one who had been alone with her daughter so often. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place: Sarah's sudden crying, her reluctance to be left with Will, the strange dream Janet had. It all pointed to a horrifying possibility. Janet knew she had to act, no matter how painful or shocking the truth might be. She called her husband, her voice shaking as she recounted the doctor's findings. Felix, devastated and furious, promised to return immediately. In the meantime, Janet contacted the authorities, determined to uncover the truth and protect her child from further harm. The events that followed would change their family forever, as secrets were revealed and justice pursued, unraveling the darkness that had threatened their happiness. Janet vowed to be strong for her daughter, no matter what it took.